All right, here we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of Mind of a Geek. I am joined, as always, by Mr. Brandon. Hello, Brandon.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
Oh, fine.
And our special guest this evening is Major Spoilers' own Steven Schleicher. Steven, welcome to the show.
Hello, Nate. Hello, Brandon. How are you guys?
Doing
great.
well.
Excellent.
Doing well. It's great to have you here. As I kind of said to you a little bit before we went on, I'm a big fan, and I like the website, like the podcasts, and you're always entertaining on Mr. Johnson's morning stream.
Thank you. The way you say it just sounds not so good. Mr. Johnson's morning stream.
TMS with Poop Jokes and Brian.
Yes.
So for those that may not be familiar with Steven, you run Major Spoilers, correct? Is that your site?
Right. Yeah. I'm the owner operator of Majorspoilers.com, a site all about comic books and pop culture. And we've been doing it now, coming up on 10 years, come in July 3rd will be 10 years.
Wow. So you've been doing that for quite a while now.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So along with that, you have some podcasts that tie in with Major Spoilers and the whole pop culture thing. And
Right.
so let's start with that. So Major Spoilers, it's been around for almost a decade now, and so I take it that comics and pop culture stuff like that's kind of a passion of yours.
Yeah, it is. Among many things, but about 10 years ago, I saw that the number of sites that were out there were, in my opinion, lacking a bunch of things and doing things in even back then, a link-baity way. And I said, well, I've been working in other media outlets, technology mostly, for about a decade at the same time. And why don't I take what I'm learning from those news sites and apply it to comic books and pop culture and create a site called Major Spoilers. So it was really something that came about as being dissatisfied with what I saw and taking something that I had a passion for and applying things that I knew about to it to make it better.
It seems interesting how many people kind of get started that way. It's like, well, okay, this is something that I do, and this is something that I have interest in, and
Right.
Well, I can't quite find something that's up to the quality that I want, so I'm just going to make it myself.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's
Necessity
a lot
is
of
the
things
mother
come
of
about
invention.
that way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I know that's how the Instant started. With the whole, he's like, I can't find one I like, so I'm going to make one, and things like that. And that was kind of how this show started. With, I mean, one, wanting to get to know people, but two, like, I'm like, all right, I'm looking for interview shows, and so many that I found were so rigid, and I'm like, I just want something where someone can come on, relax, and have a good time.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of podcasts, you also have, looks like you listed 4. There's Munchkin.
Oh, there's more than that.
Oh, there's, okay.
Yeah, I was just listing some of those.
Some of them. All right. So the ones you told me were Munchkin Land, Major Spoilers, Critical Hit, and Zach on Film. Now, I personally am familiar with the Major Spoilers one and then Critical Hit. So why don't you tell us a little bit about those?
So Major Spoilers podcast is all about comic books and pop culture. It's basically the extension of the website where 3 to 4 of us sit around each week to talk about comic books and pop culture. So that is a lot of fun. Then we have Critical Hit, which is a role-playing game, a real play role-playing game, where we play Dungeons and Dragons, and then occasionally in between a season break and the way we have it set up, we'll play another game. But mostly it's all Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition until our characters hit the highest level that they can. Matthew Peterson and I do another podcast called Dueling Reviews, where while Major Spoilers kind of looks at everything that's going on, Dueling Reviews allows us to focus on one comic book each week. So we'll spend a half hour just really diving into a single comic book. Then every Friday I have a streaming show called Finally Friday that allows listeners to call in and talk about things that they've seen during the week, and that's a lot of fun. Then what else do we have? We have the Munchkin Land, which is started out as a show about playing the game Munchkin, and people seem to like it enough, so we've continued it. And in the last year, we've kind of expanded to other tabletop games. We've got Top 5, which is a top 5 podcast about whatever people send us an interesting topic about. So it could be comic books, could be, most recently we did top 5 cereals, could be anything. Then what else? And then we have Zach on Film, which is a kind of a commentary review about filmmaking from behind the scenes and film appreciation.
Very cool. Very cool. Yep. As I said, I'm familiar with the Major Spoilers one, which I found out about from TMS, and I listened to that when I try and stay caught up with podcasting. Between working and podcasting, listening to podcasts falls behind on the wayside a little bit.
Oh, I understand that.
But so yeah, I mean, obviously, 10 years ago was, again, with comics, stuff like that, something that you had a passion for and loved. And now we're getting into this era, and it's been discussed on so many different episodes, particularly with JF that we have. And like, we're in a prime time to be a geek right now. And there's so many things, and there's so many movies, video games, TV shows. It's just like it must be awesome to run a website like that and, podcasts like that, where there's just so much content.
Yeah, and that can be both a blessing and a curse too, because there is so much stuff that's going on where people, you can only cover so much, or you can only do so much as a broad overview. That's why so many of our shows have split off into these minor categories. Because, for example, Zach on Film, a couple of years ago, one of our co-hosts on the Major Spoilers podcast, Zach, is a young kid. I should say young. He's like 23. But actually, he's probably 25 now. But he was really we would be talking. We'd say, oh, you remember that scene from Chinatown where they talk about this? And he's like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Or we would say, oh, in Planet of the Apes, when this happens. And he'd be like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so we started devoting, at the time we were doing 2 episodes a week, and we started devoting our Friday show to just educating him on film and classic movies, and making him watch a movie and then discussing it with us. And of course, then that spun off to Zach on Film, which is still going. But when you are doing a site that is so generalist like that, you run into a lot of problems of you can't cover everything.
Right.
So, for example, if you're playing Overwatch or something, you could do a whole show just about Overwatch, right? And that could be all you cover for years and years and years until the next big thing comes out.
Right.
So you could become very specific in your niche of what you love and what you love to do and share and talk about, or you can become very broad. The problem with being too specific, though, is what happens when World of Warcraft is no longer the biggest thing that everyone's talking about.
Right.
And then everyone's moved on to the next big thing.
Right.
Then you kind of run yourself out of interest. The same thing happens with a lot of the TV show podcasts or the movie podcasts. The Pottercast for a long time was the biggest podcast out there for Harry Potter, and then Harry Potter ended, and they kind of were like, okay, well, I guess we have nothing else to talk about now. So they kind of worked themselves out of business. So.
Right.
It's funny you bring that up. We have a Star Wars / Doctor Who podcast, and this year there's no Doctor Who. And the Star Wars movie just came out, so there's not a lot to talk about. So it's kind of morphed into a general geek discussion every week.
Yeah, and so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. Choose your niches wisely.
Right.
Right.
And then of course, even if you expand upon that, just like initially it was comic books and pop culture for Major Spoilers, and it's like, well, what do we mean by pop culture? Well, pop culture right now means anything we want to talk about. It could be gaming, it could be movies, it could be, something else completely. So we've kept it fairly broad like that, and still people come to us and say, oh, how come you're not talking about this topic? Or how come you're not talking about this topic? And it's like, well, we're either not super knowledgeable about that topic, or we don't have the contact or context to talk about that topic. So yeah, it can be problematic at times, but it's still fun.
So when you, when you find yourself, like, let's say a given week where there's an overload of news, like maybe a new movie came out, new announcements, things like that. What are some strategies that you and your host use to kind of narrow down? Like, do you have certain things that are a priority, like, like comic books, movies, et cetera? Like, how does that kind of work on a basis there?
Yeah. So if we're looking at the Major Spoilers podcast, obviously we're looking at comic books take priority. So if we're looking at topics for a show, I'll go through all of our news items and see what is the biggest, most relevant thing that people are talking about this week. So, for example, we might have something about the actor cast to play Iron Fist in the upcoming Netflix series. We might have something about the big excitement people have about the new Power Rangers comic book that's coming out or something else altogether. We'll narrow those down and then we'll talk about it in depth. So it just kind of depends. Comic books come first on major spoilers, and then we go from there. On Zach on Film, originally it was like 100 films that we thought 100 American films that we thought Zach should watch because they were so important to American culture and popular culture that these are things that he should be educated in. Right. Once we were done with that list, then it was, hey man, let's talk about some new movies or some current movies. And so we'll make a plan of finding a movie that's relevant to our general topic. We'll go see it and do a review show immediately after seeing it. So we've got that going. Critical Hit has always was spun out of my interest of Rodrigo always talking about what was going on in Dungeons and Dragons and not really having had a chance to play it growing up. And so I was like, well, would you mind running a campaign or two so I can get an idea of what it's about. And then it just spun off into an ongoing series. So it really kind of depends on the producer, me, figuring out what I think the audience is going to be most interested in.
Right. The one thing I will say, and I picked it up from listening to your shows and also by what you're saying now is one thing that I like about what you do is your stuff is very organic. It seems to, like, you have a plan, you have a layout, but it kind of forms, like, especially with something like Zach on Film, which was something that was purely born out of, organically having this idea, and then it became its own entity and formed a life of its own. And go ahead.
No, go ahead finish what
I was just going to say, and I always find those types of, programs, if you will, to be the most entertaining and the most, I don't know if heartfelt would be the right word, but the most authentic, because there's an organic feeling there.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, and a lot of that comes out of who are your co-hosts and who are the other people that you're dealing with on your show, that can be, that can lead to some good magical things. Other times it just leads to things that can fall apart. Yeah, I think understanding who the people are you're working with and who your audience is can lead to some very magical things happening.
Right. For sure. Now, I seem like, if I might be remembering incorrectly, I know you didn't put it in the email, but don't you have some Lego builds that you do as well?
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel, Major Spoilers Video, where I do a lot of things over there. We do unboxings of things that come in on a show called The Want List. We have a bunch of little minor shows that are video shows. So we have The Want List, which is a show about unboxing things and talking about really cool toys and products that people would want. We've been doing a lot of Lego builds, basically a weekly Lego build that for the last couple of years. And again, those, if you're looking at what's the priority, it's, well, the superhero sets come first, and then we can dive off into some other interesting sets or new sets that come out. And people seem, we've been fairly successful with just looking at the things that are relevant to pop culture, whether it be the DC or Marvel superheroes, or even the Jurassic Park stuff that we did, or Jurassic World stuff that we did this summer. So we've got that. And then I've got some 3D printing stuff over there as well that I've been doing on and off. And I kind of dropped off last year, but I've got about 5 of them ready to release over the next couple of weeks. So if people are interested into 3D printing, I've got videos on that as well, all over it.
I'm interested in Lego
Major Spoilers
builds.
Video.
I'm a Lego fanatic.
Oh, are you?
Oh, yes.
What do you like? What is the thing that you're into?
Star Wars, DC, Marvel, and then custom Legos. So you have the Doctor Who set.
Yes, that one is amazing. I love that.
It's great. I have 2. So now there's
Cool.
So now there's a couple websites that are putting out the rest of the Doctors. They're custom printed.
Oh yeah. I like those. The problem, and here's the thing with Lego that I find really fascinating is, and I haven't done an actual comparison, but I want to say that Lego are essentially worth their weight in gold, because you go to a show, for example, the minifigure Wave 15, which is about to come out or is out, depending on if you have it or not. I do. Yep. I have 2 sets in it.
That's nice.
And there's a reason why I bought 2 sets, because these things appreciate so quickly in such a short amount of time, because they're there for a minimum amount of time on the shelves, and then they disappear. So, for example, recently there was a Millennium Falcon. It was one of the bigger ones, the ones that have the lot of pieces with it, and it recently went on eBay for like $3,500 for a set that I think you paid like maybe $200 initially, so it appreciated
You refer
what
to
is that,
the
10 times.
UCS, the Ultimate Collector's Edition.
Yeah, that went for 3,500. Now the
Yeah.
thing with the new wave of the mini mates is there's been some rumors that those figures are being recalled here in the United States for possible copyright violation because one of the minifigures is a guy dressed in a shark costume, and they think it's because somebody from the Katy Perry camp or from the NFL is trying to say, hey, you're trying to pull off left shark, right shark from the Super Bowl, and you can't do that. So here's what's going to happen. If that truly is the case, if they truly yank that minifigure or that entire run from store shelves in America, the price of that one minifigure will go from $5.99 or whatever you pay for the individual pack to something like $500 overnight.
Yeah, and then eBay becomes your friend and covers all of your Lego expenditures for the year.
Exactly. See, so
I'm well aware
I've had
of
some
it.
of those. I mean, I've had some of the Lego, the city stuff. Like the giant movie theater and the Green Grocer and all those.
Yeah,
I had a couple of
cinema.
those sitting around for like 5 years that I had never built, and I was like, well, I need to buy some of these more relevant Lego sets so that we can build them on the show. And I sold those for a lot of money because people were fanatical about completing their set, and because they were still in their original packaging, had never been opened.
Yep.
They went for really high prices. So Lego, I would say it's worth its weight in gold. I don't know what gold is currently going for, but a custom
much as
minifigure,
Lego.
like you said,
Let's
with
say
the
it's-
doctor.
It's probably worth more than its weight in gold.
Yeah, Lego is
Probably.
a great investment.
You go to a convention and you see these custom Lego figures, and those are going for $15-20 a pop.
Oh,
Or
I
a little
know.
tiny 3 ounces of plastic.
Or 30, depending on who you buy it from and the quality. I have a Flash and a Batman that are super printed on all sides, but they're like $32 a piece.
Wow. Yeah. And see, that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That people. But see, that's what we're talking about with finding a passion about what you really love and what you like doing. I've loved Lego since I was a kid,
Yeah.
and I was like, and the Lego video started out a couple of years ago just as a lark, because I was like, I was messing around with some time lapse stuff and perfecting that. I was like, well, here's some Lego stuff. Let me just build it. I had no idea that there were a bunch of Lego time lapse build videos already online, and I started putting them out there, and people were like, hey, these are pretty cool. Keep doing it. So then that developed into this kind of recurring
Yeah, definitely.
Lego build and review show that we do.
I'm going to have to check that one out.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. In my adult on-set Lego obsession, my favorite thing about it is that all of my favorite brands are now the same size.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
rather than
yeah.
have to have my short little Ninja Turtles and my short G.I. Joes and my tall Power Rangers, everybody's the same size now. And they all fit together with everything. It's great.
And fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, Lego has been acquiring all the properties, so you don't have to worry about those horrid Mego bricks
Exactly.
mixing in with your Lego and being on offside size, or even mini mates. Nothing against mini mates,
No.
but the minifigures and mini mates are about one's a little bit bigger,
Yeah.
and they just don't work together. So
I just wish wish Lego would get on board with getting the video game properties, because all those are Mega Blocks.
Yeah.
yeah. For now, until that runs out. Remember, Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, and all that stuff was over at Mego for a long time, or Mega Blocks, or whatever
Yeah.
it is. And then when that ran out, Lego snatched it up immediately.
Right.
And
Well-
started doing the Marvel superhero and DC superhero line. So soon as Nintendo is tired of Mega Blocks, and soon as Halo is tired of that, then I'm sure, maybe not with Halo, because that's more of a fighting thing, and Lego tries to keep everything super friendly.
Right.
But I would not be surprised to see a Donkey Kong, Mario Brothers, anything like that appearing up in Lego in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I would love-
Especially with Dimensions. I mean, they're
Oh,
looking
yeah.
for so many properties. And
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles, they dropped Ninja Turtles, and Mega Bloks has that again. But now they have a classic turtle van from the 80s cartoon, which I have to get. I don't care if it's Mega Bloks or not.
Now, I guess the beauty of the two brands is they interlock with each other, correct?
Well, yeah, and that's because there's a really long history of Lego and the copyright behind those bricks, and eventually it went to the Supreme Court, and they basically said, no, you can't trademark a Lego brick because there are so many other iterations that came out that you quote unquote borrowed from to
Right.
make your Lego, and so they just basically open sourced it.
Right.
And so you can have interlocking bricks. You can't have the exact same Lego shape, especially with those tubes on the bottom of your Lego bricks.
Right.
But yeah, you can make interlocking bricks that are compatible, and a lot of people certainly have. So
Yeah.
Now, something that I was wondering, because you mentioned 3D printing, and 3D printing is something that I love the idea of, especially, being a geek, I have you can see behind Brandon's side of the camera, like the Funko vinyl, stuff like that. Like I
Yeah, yeah.
love all the collectibles. And I'm like, okay, I can print my own stuff. Plus I have 2 little kids. And I'm
Right.
like, okay, I can print stuff for them. And, like she has like all of her board games. And I'm like, I can print her little custom figures for her board games, stuff like that. With something like Legos, is that something that we are in a current technological state of 3D printing where you can print your own blocks efficiently?
I don't know about efficiently. The problem with ABS and PLA, especially on a 3D printer side, is that there's something called shrinkage, and the tolerances have to be just right. So what happens is you can go onto a site like Thingiverse, and you can do a search for Lego brick, and you will find hundreds of thousands of people who have made Lego bricks or Lego adapters or pieces that are hard to find in other sets, and they've either built them or scanned them or done whatever and put them up on Thingiverse for you to download and use. Well, it may be the correct dimension of a 2x4 Lego brick, but you print it out, and because of the shrinking that happens as the PLA or ABS happens, the stuff contracts a little bit. So to have them interlock perfectly with a Lego brick is very hard. So you have to play around with that until you figure out, okay, I have to print this 0.03% larger so that when it shrinks, it will be compatible with my Lego set.
Okay.
Or then when the temperature changes, you're going to run into that same problem again. But yeah, I mean, it can be done. And I've actually got a video coming up because I've printed off a bunch of pieces from different people that claim that these are just as good as Lego brick. And there's one that's like not quite as tall as a Lego brick. There's one that's too tight to go onto. So yeah, it requires a lot of fiddling around from that side of it.
Right.
On the other side, if you're talking about making like pieces for your games, like a Monopoly piece disappears, or you have to print out a new checker or something like that, whatever it may be. Yeah, you can do that really easily. You can even design it yourself and print it out. So that's a possibility. And then the action figure side, that has been coming along quite a bit in the last probably 2 years. Again, go up to Thingiverse and you can see all these action figures that people are making, and they're super jointed.
Right.
So you've got great articulation on all the figures. There are now, I have a MakerBot Replicator 2, which is an older printer, but it's still really good as far as printing and being compatible. But MakerBot, the people that make that printer, they have their own store where they've actually licensed things like Sesame Street characters and the Ugly Dolls, and I forget what else they've had. But you print these things out, and they are super high quality. The Ugly Doll stuff is about the same size as a pop vinyl figure.
Right.
And it looks really, really good. And you pay a couple bucks to get the design, you download it, you can print it off as many times, and you've got a whole army of figures that you can run around with. So yeah, there's, on the toy side, there are definitely some possibilities for that.
Nice.
So cool. So I just wanted to jump back real quick to the Mini-Mates.
Sure.
Sorry.
That's fine.
No, that's fine.
So it annoys me to no end that with Mini-Mates you can get anything from Marvel that you want, whereas Lego, it's so strict. Like, I really want the Deadpool core, Age of Apocalypse. Like, the Age of Apocalypse Wolverine in Lego would be so awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm only ever going to get it in Mini-Mates, and I don't like the Mini-Mates at all.
Yeah, now, as far as Deadpool and Wolverine go, there was actually a set, I think it was one of the very first Marvel sets. I don't know if you have this, but it was like the Deadpool helicopter set. Oh, you got 2 of everything.
Yeah, I do.
But it came with a Deadpool and it came with a Wolverine. I thought that was really cool. But
I have 5 Deadpools now.
Oh, wow. I've got 1, and my son has been my youngest who's 4, just loves everything Lego, and he has been playing the Lego video game, the Marvel Lego video game. And there's a section in there where you can go in and you can create your own minifigs for the game. You like swap in arms and heads and all these kinds of things. So he's actually pulling apart all of his minifigures and assembling them from what he sees in the game. And he's like, look, this is the one that I made last night on the game, and here's this.
That's really cool.
The joy of Lego.
Begging me. Yeah, he's been begging me. Can I play with your Deadpool minifigure? I'm like, heck to the no, because you're going to tear it up and lose the pieces. And I've only got 1, and I'm not paying $50 online for another one. So.
Now,
I'll send you a link after the show to some of the custom Deadpool stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah. But going back to what you said about having, a specific one, the Mini-Mates, they can go in and they can create some pretty bloody and gory stuff. Like if you want to go find the Mini-Mates Marvel Zombies, they've got that with like brains hanging out and stuff. Lego's never going to do that because that goes beyond that kid-friendly attitude.
See, it almost makes me wish I had jumped on that bandwagon beforehand, but
The Mini-Mates?
Yeah, but I don't like them. I just
Yeah. There's something about them. I don't know. I think it's the faces. I mean, what's really cool about that is they're infinitely customizable. And that was the thing that first attracted me to the Mini-Mates was that you could go on and, okay, so they don't have a Luke Cage figure dressed in a costume. But if you take these 32 other Mini-Mate pieces and put them together, you can make this really cool Luke Cage costume.
right.
And so I started into that for a while, but then I was like, you know what? These really aren't compatible with anything that Lego does.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop. So
one thing I was going to mention, we were talking, you guys talking about Deadpool. Do you? I would assume that with that new movie that came out, which I loved, I assume you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, it was really fun. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
It's probably safe to assume that we're not going to get a Deadpool Lego set from.
Like I said, they've already got the Deadpool figure. That was an official license thing. But I as far as getting a Colossus figure or anything like that, we're probably not going to see anything that is set on that right now.
Right.
Marvel itself seems to be very interested in just the Marvel MCU stuff.
Right.
So like the new sets that are coming out that just came out on March 1st are all about the upcoming Civil War movie. So you've got this Black Panther chase. You've got an airport showdown that has all these figures, including a Giant Man.
Yeah, Giant Man is awesome.
Yeah,
Nice.
the Giant Man one looks pretty cool. So yeah, we're probably not going to see anything with Deadpool because they've already kind of released something like that.
Right.
The other thing to keep in mind too, when you're looking at these Lego sets and you see Giant Man, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be in the movie.
Right.
Because they did that with the Ant-Man, where there was an Ant-Man set called the final fight, I think is what it was, and it was Scott Lang Ant-Man, Yellow Jacket, and then they had Hank Pym Ant-Man riding on a giant flying ant, and it's like, holy crap, are they both going to be on screen together at the same time? Has never happened.
Yeah, it so annoys me that I have both of those Ant-Man suits for Pym and Lang, and not in the movie.
Yeah.
Now, so I know for a little while, like there's always some stuff that they'll kind of hint and give away a little bit. Like, we found out from the Ecto 1 and 2 set coming out that we're getting an Ecto 2 motorcycle in the new movie, or at least we can assume we are. It wasn't in the trailer.
We call those toilers.
Right, toilers. But are they trying to do, like, is that something that they try to avoid, or they try to do, like, just not spoil what's coming up in upcoming movies with sets that are coming out before the movie?
I don't know, because I think it's just, hey, what can kids play with? And, a kid might go and see a Harry Potter movie, and, it takes place at the School of Magic, and then they come and they can buy this giant set, and they don't have to actually reenact everything from the movie. They can go and have their own new adventure. So I think that that's part of what we see here. Now, the Ecto 2, I do believe we have seen Peter Feige, whatever, how you ever say his last name. Feige.
I think it's Peter Feig.
In one of his
Feige.
things, he's actually released a picture of the motorcycle in one of his Instagram, Twitter things. So we know that there is a motorcycle that's in there. Now, whether there's a whole sequence of a possessed Chris Hemsworth chasing them down, that's a whole other story.
Right.
Because the minifigure for that has a possessed Chris Hemsworth in that. So
can we kind of get a little bit of your opinion on the trailer that came out today?
I think it's still rather vague. I think it hits on all the points. I don't know why the trailer is saying, something about 30 years ago, when they've said that this movie it's not tied to that original universe. It might be, but it seems to be that this is a complete new reboot.
Yeah.
Right.
At the very least, I'd like to see that maybe they're related somehow.
That's what I would like to
Tied
see, is some kind
together.
of a relation. We know that Bill Murray has said that he would be in the movie.
And Aykroyd wrote this, or helped write the script, right?
Aykroyd helped on some of the writing with it. And at one point, and Ernie Hudson's supposed to be in the movie too. So I don't understand why they're saying it's a reboot when it's not, if it's got these characters in it and if they are playing themselves.
Right.
30 years later. There's a whole, they could just basically say, hey, the Ghostbusters retired, the original Ghostbusters retired because the ghosts were gone, and because of spin campaigns that happened over the last 30 years, and because people are stupid, everyone forgot that ghosts really exist, or that it was just bunko science and these guys were discredited.
Right.
And now here come another group of scientists following in on their lead. So we don't have a whole story. This is a first trailer. This is supposed to get people interested in it. I think some of the special effects are maybe not up to par.
Right.
But I think it looks fine. I mean, I'm going to go see it.
Yeah.
Certainly, I think this plays up more on the laughs than the original Ghostbusters movie
Yeah,
did.
definitely.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've said, dude. I have up here in Maine, we have a I don't know if you'd call it a coalition, but they call themselves the Maine Ghostbusters. And they
okay.
all have.
I get it.
If
I
you
get it.
if you look them up, they do charity events. They go around
Oh, yeah,
to
cool.
and a guy I went to high school with is a part of it. And like they have the full outfits, they have the proton packs. I mean, it's the full shebang. One of them even has an Ecto-1 that he
neat.
customized a station
Oh,
wagon.
Coast City Comics guy. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy from Coast City.
So
Yeah.
it's like the 501st Legion for
Only for
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters, yeah. But so I was speaking to him today a little bit, and that's what I had said was that even, I mean, I'm not young, but I'm not older. I mean, I'm 31. I'll be 32 next month. But even for me, where the original Ghostbusters came out the year I was born, and it like trying to watch it, like I get it and I respect it and I love it. I've always enjoyed it, but as it gets older, it seems to be a little bit more slower in its pacing. And
Well,
some
because
of
it originally wasn't meant to be, a total comedy. It was supposed to be a horror comedy with the horror
Right.
part first.
right.
Yeah. So
It just
there you go.
Yeah. Well, no, I that makes sense.
This one seems
but-
to play up more on the comedy
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
than the horror aspect of it, at least from this first trailer. And I think that's what you have to have in here, because if this had been a very slow, kind of horrifying bit, people would be like, well, I don't know about this. I thought all these were all supposed to be comedians, and
Right.
this isn't funny at all. And so they have to put in the thing about, the Exorcist gag, and they have to put in the I forget what there were a couple of other gags that they had in there.
Yeah,
they have
they-
to put that stuff in there to make people realize, oh, this is a comedy. Now it may be a bit more serious than that, but right now it reads very much as a comedy.
Yeah, and in this day and age, the pacing in movies has to be kept up to keep people's interest. People's interest spans are so small, they can't
Right.
sit through a movie where the pacing is really, really slow, and they actually have to pay attention.
On that note, we were stuck sitting through a movie whose
I
pacing
know.
was really slow.
I knew that we were working up to that.
I didn't
so-
want to. Have you? We'll mention it really quick because it doesn't even bear talking about. But
Well,
if
you know what's funny is
What?
that movie has stuck with me the whole.
it
3
has in
days.
it. It's funny. Have
It
you?
was so underwhelming and yet so. It did its job for sure.
Yeah, I guess. Stephen, have you heard of that movie, The Witch?
Oh yeah. I've heard about it. I have not seen it. The thing is, I'm not a big horror movie
Oh,
fan.
it's
I
not
have to kind of be in
scary
the mood for it
at
Oh, okay.
all. It's like he suggested it to me. We have a spoiler cast that we do too, and we're like, we did our first episode of that for Deadpool, and we're like, oh well, let's go check out The Witch. So we went, and it's got a 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, a lot of
Like,
people like it.
And we're at the theater, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, what did you make me go see?
Yeah.
I'm texting my wife. I'm like, this is the most boring movie I've ever been to. There's like, I felt like there was no payoff at all. Like, I guess it's supposed to be like a classy, artsy thing, but
Was there supposed to be a twist at the end?
no.
No, it's,
No.
So it's just a straight up.
it's a
It-
movie
or
that's
Witch in
full
the
of
Woods
jump
kind of thing.
cuts and praying.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
slow zooms with ever increasing music. The crescendo is rising, and then jump cuts where they jump forward in time. People pray a lot, and you don't actually ever see anything. It's very throwback. It's shot in 1:1. But I mean, like I just said, I'm guilty of it too. I need a higher pace than that.
Yeah, but I mean, I
Yeah.
guess I can understand that. But back to Ghostbusters, really quick. I wanted to say, you're talking about, is it a reboot? Is it a continuation? What's going on? I did notice in the trailer that they're redoing the library scene.
Yeah, the very first part where the ghost throws up all over. Is it Kristen Wiig? Is that who it throws up
think
over?
so. I forget.
Yeah, it's Kristen Wiig.
Yeah. Okay. Well, who's the other one? It's
They've got Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy, who I'm not a super fan of hers.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
not
I
either.
appreciate what she does, but I'm just not a super fan. Kate McKinnon,
that's the other one, McKinnon.
yeah, she's the one with the blonde hair,
Right.
the
I was-
kind of the weird one of the group. But
I was talking to Brandon on the phone this morning after the trailer came out, and I'm like, all right, there's the tall African American lady, there's Melissa McCarthy, and then there's two hot ones, and I know one's Kristen Wiig. I can't think of the other one's name, but I know the other one does the Justin Bieber impression.
okay.
But anyway, but yeah, so I don't know. It looks, like I said, it looks like it's going to be entertaining.
Yeah, at the very least, it's going to be entertaining, right?
Right.
I mean, I think it will be at least as good as Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, but that's not saying much.
I love that
Right?
movie.
I mean, so you've only got
Did you?
nothing,
Yeah.
but I mean, if you set your bar, I think lately for me, I've gotten to the point where I no longer get super hyped about a movie that's coming out.
Right.
Because when I do, I usually am super disappointed in the movie.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
And so I try to hold myself back a little bit. And I don't want to bash a movie. I don't want to say, oh, this is going to be the suckiest thing in the world. But I go in going, okay, this is probably not going to be as good as the trailers make it look like. And so I'm going to set my bar really, really low so that I have nothing but, accomplishments. You can leap over that bar very easily and surprise me.
Right.
I try to
Right.
appreciate
So-
the fact that we live in a world where geekery is king. So we get all
Yeah,
this
yeah.
stuff, but on the other side, like, it's Hollywood, so they're gonna try to cash in. So you get a lot of assembly line movies.
Mhm.
So again, I try to keep that, I don't know, that middle ground where I'm not too excited, so I'm not ever too let down.
Yeah.
It's like you're
Yeah,
hopeful
I'm the
but
same way.
realistic.
But at
Yeah,
the same
I'm
time,
very hopeful
more of
about
everything.
Ghostbusters. I think there's some great potential for this movie.
Right.
I hope that it's treated right. I think the problem that we see sometimes with remakes like this is they're like, hey, remember how funny the first Ghostbusters was? And you watch it, and yeah, there are a few funny moments, but for the most part, it's like kind of crazy and kind of scary. And so they try to say, well, we need to add 10 times more haha stuff in this movie.
Right.
And then suddenly it's like, well, this is not as good as the original stuff was. It's kind of like that fourth Indiana Jones movie, the one where he crawls into the refrigerator for the
Yeah.
nuclear blast.
Yeah.
That's basically saying, well, how can we amp up that opening sequence from the very first movie? How can we take that and amp it up each time to the point where it's so ridiculous that audiences are like, well, I'm sorry, my suspension of disbelief is totally gone now because you did that.
Right.
Sure, I can see a guy running through a cavern being chased by a giant boulder and making it out of the way. Sure, I can see him avoiding a shootout in a Chinese nightclub. Yes, I can see him, whatever the third movie was. But then I'm climbing into a refrigerator to avoid a nuclear blast. I'm out. And I worry that too many remakes that are happening today that's what they do. They're like, how can we make this bigger and bolder than what came before? And ultimately it causes the audience to go, not very good.
Let's put Shia LaBeouf in it. It'll be fine.
Yes, let's put Shia LaBeouf in it.
Young
Yeah.
Indiana
Ruin
Jones.
everything.
Yeah.
That's what Ghostbusters needs. It needs more Shia LaBeouf. Maybe there'll be a ghost Shia LaBeouf in there.
Slimer Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, that being said, though, about, not to talk about the Crystal Skull, but the fridge wasn't the worst thing. You put Lucas in there and he throws aliens in the end. And
That, if you look at the genre, and you see what's going on, the alien stuff does kind of make sense.
I mean, I guess it's always been supernatural. And I guess
it has focused on the supernatural, but then when you look at some of the Incan and the Mayan things, and then people do try to attach that to ancient aliens.
it's true. Yeah.
And the fact that the movie was going from the 1930s, which was very pre-nuclear age, very mysticism, to the point where we have a nuclear bomb that takes place. I have this theory that magic type stories mysticism ended in 1943 when the nuclear bomb was dropped, because the moment that the first nuclear bomb went off, everybody focused to science and looking outward instead of downward or inward.
Right.
And so you see this whole shift into sci-fi. I mean, look at all the cowboy westerns and everything that just kind of evaporated the minute that the space age entered the market.
Right.
And that's kind of what's happening in that fourth Indiana Jones movie, is they're trying to make that transition from old Indiana Jones, who did it in the old way and it was all about mysticism, to now it's science and space, and let's try to tie these two together. So I understand what they were going for. They just didn't pull it off.
Right. Although that theory does make that movie a little bit more palpable.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
a huge leap for the layman. They're not going to think like that.
Right.
No.
It's going to fall short.
But it's something, I mean, if you go and look at, I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the series, Carnival. Have you ever seen that movie?
No.
I have not. No.
It's a great HBO series. It ran for I want to say 1 or 2 seasons, but it's about this traveling carnival that goes around from town to town. It's taking place during the Depression. And this kid has this magical power to bring people back to life if he wants to. And so there's all this mysticism tied around it. And then there's an evil preacher who is basically the devil, who is trying to find this kid, and when they merge, something will explode and change the world. But at the same time, there are these flash forwards to the Alamogordo nuclear tests that kind of signals the end of magic in that time period. And so it kind of also reflects on that as well. That came out, I want to say, like 2000, 2001, around the same time that Deadwood was on HBO. It's a really good series to go track down. It's got Clancy Brown as the evil preacher.
Nice.
It's really good.
Deadwood, on the other hand, love Deadwood.
Oh, man, I'm amazed that they're trying to get a Deadwood movie to come back.
Yeah.
Just because rounding up all of those actors.
Yeah, now with scheduling.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, Ian McShane just signed up for.
Yeah, he's going to be Mr. Wednesday.
Yeah,
Yes.
In what's the show that he's in?
I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on that.
I don't know what you're talking about. So
I know the character, but I can't think of the title.
Yeah. So yeah, he was just signed up for a show. It's Game of Thrones, Dr. Thorne. What else?
American Gods.
Yeah. Oh yeah, American Gods. That's
the
it.
one.
The Neil Gaiman piece.
That looks interesting.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they tell that story, because they're going to have to jump it forward in time.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we're never going to know what happened unless they're going to tell it through a flashback when, who was it? Hearst. I don't know if it was Hearst. But when Simon and Simon came in that last episode, and it was like, he's going to come back and just wipe out the town and take all the gold for himself.
Yeah.
We'll never know what happens with that.
I would say as a fan of media, that's probably one of my biggest disappointments, is when there's this series that I'm following along that just gets canned out of the
and
blue.
it's always my favorite ones. Firefly.
Yeah.
Why did Firefly have to go away?
That was Fox incompetence. Is what that was.
Yeah.
Well, is that not typical of them every time?
Fox
it is.
incompetence.
Look at Family Guy. How many times did Family Guy come and go?
Right. I'm pretty bummed about the recent cancellation. Well, not recent. It was last year, but Hannibal. I mean, it was such a great show, and I'm like, why are you getting rid of this? Mads Mikkelsen is an amazing Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, but now
it'd be
he's
interesting.
a doctor.
I don't know about the Psycho movie, but or Hannibal, sorry. But if you go and look at the ratings, the way ratings have changed and the way that streaming media and everything has changed that. If you go back and you look at that final episode or whatever of Deadwood when they canceled it, and you look at its rating, I guarantee you it probably has 10 times the audience.
Yeah.
Probably not Game of Thrones, but most of the other regular, like Ballers, for example, on HBO.
Right.
Or Deadwood probably has a higher audience than the most popular show on ABC right now, just because the audience has been so skewed. But, back in 2000, you look and see what the ratings were for Deadwood at that time, or 2001, and you're like, oh, this show is in the stinker. I guess it was 2006 when that series ended. But 10 years ago, you're like, oh, that show's a stinker. But today, it's probably going to be a huge moneymaker. It'd be a huge hit. It'd be the equivalent of True Detective season 2 or more.
Yeah. And I mean, in that 10 years, there's been such a paradigm shift in the way that we take in media. Nielsen households don't really apply anymore. They need a new metric for all of the cord cutters, but
they do. They try to. And of course, the problem is when you have somebody like Netflix, they won't tell you how many people are watching their shows.
Yeah.
So that's like an industry secret for them. Same way with Amazon and Hulu. They're not telling you how many people are looking at their shows. You can look at things like Pirate Bay and look and see how many times Game of Thrones has been pirated. In fact, HBO, thumps their chest and says, "We are the most pirated show of all time. This is why we continue to make it."
Yeah.
Which is like, again, 10 years ago, they would have said, "This is an atrocity. Governments need to shut down this stuff and prevent our shows we're losing these monies." But no, now they parade it around. And so, it's hard to track what people are watching today, because a Nielsen book, if you guys have ever done a Nielsen book, is number one, super boring.
Yeah.
Number two, it's super inaccurate. And number three, it is sampling the smallest percentage of people that they possibly can. And that's going to skew the data. We were a Nielsen household last year. And I just told my wife, I'm like, write in all of these shows, whether we watch them or not. Because what will happen is ours will count like 100,000 households.
Yeah.
And so we're going to shape the way a show stays on the air or not stays on the air simply by how we fill out the book.
You don't think that's indicative of every network, old white men who think they have their finger on the pulse, but really they're so anachronistic. They use these old, antiquated ways of doing things, and it's just...
Well, even with TiVo, it took them a long time to be able to say, okay, our overnight rating of Supergirl or The Flash or something was this. And then the 3-day rating or the 3-day audience retention is this, because now we have to schedule in all the time shifters. And so they would have live +3, and now I think they have live +7 or +10, so that they can go out almost 2 weeks to see all the people who are watching it on their TiVos, but they just have to take 2 weeks to catch up and get up to everything.
Yeah.
So it's really weird. I don't know if there's a better way to measure a metric beyond convincing Netflix and Hulu and some of these others to say you need to open up your numbers. I mean, I'm sure if they wanted to, they could go and see how many people have subscribed to a show on iTunes, the show producers. But unless it's the company unveiling those numbers, it's hard to see what's popular and not popular.
That's frightening when it comes to the age we're going into with CBS doing Star Trek and everybody else getting their own streaming service.
Right.
I mean, where that market's about to explode and we're about to pay as much as we would for cable, I would think that Hulu would just try to release their numbers. But, I mean, original programming for them, too. So.
Here's the thing. I believe that the networks know what their numbers are. Now, I'm sure Marvel knows how well Deadpool and Jessica Jones did as far as the Netflix series goes. Maybe they're not as good as they hoped they would be, but they're good enough for an unknown factor, right? It's like, well, we've never seen anything this successful before. It must be good. Let's continue it. The problem is there are companies like CBS that are looking at Netflix and they're saying they're making a crap ton of money simply by delivering stuff streaming. And here we're trying to collect pennies, literal pennies for our channels at a cable outlet instead of charging a customer. And I don't remember what it is exactly, but each channel is charged a certain percentage of money that then becomes your cable bill. So, you want to get CBS, they probably pay $1 per subscriber to CBS to run the CBS channel. But if CBS can say, hey, look, we can charge somebody $6 a month as opposed to getting $1 from those people, we can now get 6 times that from our streaming service. I think that what CBS is doing with Star Trek especially is brilliant because they're giving that free taste of the drug
to pull
on broadcast television and saying, hey, if you want to see the rest of it, come sign up for our streaming service.
Yeah, but how much can that really go on until it's not going to work anymore?
The same way that people are fans of a Patreon or a VIP site or a member site or anything like that. They'll pay for it until they're tired of it,
right?
And then they'll cancel it. Or the same way with your premium shows. I know a lot of people before the cord cutting became a thing, where they would subscribe to HBO during Game of Thrones, and then after that they would cancel their subscription and then sign up again when Game of Thrones was going to debut again.
My mother. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I have a friend that does that. Actually, he just renewed Netflix today because House of Cards drops tomorrow.
Oh, well,
or is it tomorrow, or what's today's Thursday, right? Yeah,
something like that.
Tomorrow. So, but yeah, it's one of those things where it's as consumers, we really are getting to a point where we're going to have to speak with our wallets, and we're going to have to go like.
I speak with my wallet.
Right, and I'm like CBS with Star Trek, and I'm wondering if CBS is going to get an impression that our streaming service will work because of how many Star Trek fanatics are excited for new material, so they don't care if it's a good deal; they're going to subscribe. And I'm just wondering, and I get worried myself with little things too, like, we were talking about ratings and how shows stay on. Like one of my favorite shows right now is Gotham. I absolutely love Gotham, but I don't have cable in my house.
Oh, you're the one. Okay.
Yeah. The one. Hey. Anyway.
I have questions about that in a minute too.
Anyway, but I have Hulu, and Hulu gives it to me on streaming 24 hours after it airs. But then there's that part of me where I'm like, well, now am I possibly contributing to this show not getting extended for a 3rd season because Fox isn't getting mention of my streaming of it on Hulu? Like, are we losing some of our favorite shows because we're watching them on streaming and not watching them on TV?
So keep in mind that Gotham, which is a fine show. There's nothing really wrong with it.
Great show. Thank you,
there's
Ashley.
There's stuff wrong with
Thank
it.
you, Ashley, in the chat room. She's like, yes, Gotham.
Gotham is fine. I really don't have a problem with it. I like Gotham for what it is. So what happens is a show like Gotham is produced by and funded by Warner Brothers, right?
Right.
And so what they do is they turn around and they sell that right for Fox to broadcast it. So Fox is just saying, hey, we have X amount of dollars that we're going to contribute to this. This is how much you're selling it for. We will pay for it, and we will then sell all of that advertising in hopes that we can recoup the cost of what we paid for this.
Right.
At the same time, then Warner Brothers turns around to Hulu and says, hey, would you also like to buy into this? It's going to cost Hulu this much money, and hopefully Hulu, through your subscribers, you will be able to afford this.
Right.
And so that's the way it works. So if Fox at the end of the next season says, hey, this is not really, we're not making the money we thought we were going to make off Gotham, which I'm sure they are.
Right.
But if they say, hey, we're not getting the money we thought we were making off of this from our advertising dollar, we're going to have to cancel. We're not going to buy it. We're not going to renew it. Well, Warner Brothers could still say, hey, Hulu, if you guys want to continue doing this, here's how much it's going to cost you now in order to do this, and you would have it as an exclusive. Hulu could do that.
Right. Take, for example, the Mindy Project.
Right.
What's that?
Take, for example, the Mindy Project. That's exactly
the Mindy
what
Project. Right.
Okay.
Is that still going on, though? I think they tried it, and the Mindy Project didn't
as far as I know, it's on Hulu. It went to Hulu. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean that's a perfect example of what can happen with that. So we're away from a generation, again 30 years ago ABC would have been fronting all of the money to have these shows produced. Now other people are producing the shows and selling them to the networks and selling them to the streaming services or putting them up online or whatever. So it's a different model of selling content today.
Right. Well, it seems to be, it's working, and until we get to the point where we're paying as much for streaming services as we were for cable.
Yeah.
That is my problem, because we basically have cable only because we get a steep discount on our internet connection and our phone bundled as everything together. Right. But we don't have HBO or any of those other things. But if I subscribe, and I'm not one that wants to subscribe to a service to get the entire package, but I will subscribe to a season of Arrow, or I will subscribe to a season of Gotham on iTunes. And then I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, if I were doing that with every show I liked, I'm actually paying more through that method than I would if I were just using the whole cable channel the way it's supposed to be used. So you do run into those concerns.
Right. So do you watch all of those CW shows? Arrow?
So I'm behind on Arrow. I'm about 2 seasons behind on Arrow. I am about a half a season behind, I think, on Gotham right now. I started at the beginning of the season on Gotham. I'm behind on that. Supergirl, I'm all caught up on. Doctor Who, I'm all caught up on. I watched the pilot episode of Lucifer and haven't decided whether I want to go back and watch the rest.
I'm with you on that. I watched the first and I'm not back yet.
Yeah. So it may be one of those things where when I'm totally bored, I will go back and binge watch those.
Right. Legends of Tomorrow. Have you watched that?
Oh, yeah. I'm a huge fan of Legends of Tomorrow. I love that show awesome. To pieces. So
it's so awesome. I can't wait for more. I love it. And it's basically Doctor Who. It's got Rory. Mm-hmm. So,
a lot of people say that. I'm not sure I totally agree with it, but yeah.
Well, he has his ship. He's the Doctor, obviously, and they're all his companions. And he was a companion on Doctor Who. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yes.
But regardless, I love it anyway.
I think
and I have all of those Lego figures already.
I think you're just trying to connect as many loose ties as you can to Doctor Who because you don't have a Doctor Who this year.
The chat room wants me to show off my T-shirt, so indicative of that.
What is your T-shirt? Oh, a Doctor Who T-shirt. That's cool.
It's Doctor Who.
Oh, Doctor Who Deadpool. That's cool.
So yeah, I'll tie all the loose ends I can to Doctor Who.
Yeah, there you go. That works. So before we kind of get ready to start closing up, I did want to ask you as far as movies. I think this is probably the biggest year for geek movies we've had so far, or at least one of the.
Yeah, I would say it depends on how you're defining year, but yes, I would say that this is definitely an arc of a time period where we're getting a crap ton of stuff. Yeah.
What is as far as the 2016 releases? What's the one you're most excited about?
I think the one that I'm most excited about right now is Batman versus Superman.
Right.
Just because I want to see how they're able to do that and if they're able to do it successfully. So that's the one I'm most interested in seeing from just from a curiosity standpoint.
Right.
I'm not so much interested in Civil War, although I do like Captain America a lot. But I think I'm also excited for Rogue One.
Yeah.
So those would be the top 3 that I'm looking forward to this year.
Rogue One I really look forward to, just to see how they spin an original Star Wars story away from the main mythos.
Because, look at what we had from Star Wars. We have the main Star Wars movies, and that's all we've seen on screen. Then we have the Christmas special. We've got the Droids TV show. We've got...
Does the Christmas special have to be the first thing that you mention?
Well, if we're going chronologically, yes.
Fair enough.
Notice I did skip over the Ewoks movie that was on TV. So.
Yeah, have you been reading Kanan?
I have not. I've been watching Star Wars Rebels, which I think is fantastic. Just
I like it a lot.
Star Wars Clone Wars series was fantastic.
How do you feel about the fact that the Clone Wars ended like that and they replaced it with Rebels after the buyout?
I was very disappointed, especially because at the time we did not know what happened to Ahsoka.
No, I so wanted to know. I'm so happy that they brought those characters back, though.
they almost had to, because otherwise we didn't get a complete story. But the weird thing is, and this is the thing I think maybe some people are upset about, the way that the TV side of the Star Wars universe is going, is like, there was a Order 66 or whatever it was to kill all Jedi, and we see this great sequence at the end of Episode 3 where they're just downing Jedi left and right.
Yet
and
to
now we
further
get
the
the Star
plot,
Wars
you
Rebels,
still
and
have
there's
to
like
have
50 Jedi running around.
Well,
Right.
you have to have a plot somewhere, I guess.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
to tie that into Lego, have you seen that they're gonna have Captain Rex's old, the walker thing that he and the other two, I can't think of the
Oh,
names.
I did not see that. Is that up on Lego Shop already, or
It's not released yet, but if you go to like Bricklink,
Brick World or something? Yeah.
you'll see it. But I'm pretty excited for that old Rex and everybody else, and I really want an adult Ahsoka. And
Yes,
I don't have
I
that
think that
yet,
would be very cool.
Yeah, it would be awesome.
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Star Wars and Lego and Doctor Who. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's I think some of us are still feeling the excitement from 7, and that we got the movie we hoped we would get, at least for the most part, and now we've got it coming to us digitally, or either way for home viewing. What, in about a month now, right?
April 1st is when you'll be able to get it on your iTunes and your digital download places, and then April 5th is when it's going to come out on Blu-ray. So it kind of depends on how you're situated. Me, unless there's something special that comes with the Blu-ray collection, I've really just been doing everything through iTunes purchases, because number one, I get it early,
Right.
and number two, I am running out of space here to hold 45 years worth of pop culture nerdiness. So.
Yeah. See, I'm pretty bummed because in a lot of places, I'm sure you've seen it too, they have the pre-order for the digital, and it comes with 3 of the full-size movie posters. But the digital version they have is ultraviolet. And I'm like, I don't want I mean, I still was really close to buying it, because I'm like, okay, it's $20 for 3 full-size movie posters. And I'm like, all right, but then I'm stuck with an ultraviolet copy, and I'm like, I'm not going to do anything with it. Like, so many of these Blu-rays used to come with iTunes, and now it's like Disney has their own thing, and then ultraviolet, and like, it's like, just give me my iTunes digital copy.
I don't know of anybody that uses the ultraviolet version myself. I mean, I've had stuff that's come in, it's like, oh yeah, great ultraviolet. I'm just going to toss that card because I know I'm never going to use it.
Right.
But it almost feels like when we're looking at ultraviolet and some of these other proprietary digital formats, it's almost like the format wars that we went through with HD, DVD, and Blu-ray.
Right.
And it's like, man, you gotta, if ultraviolet decides to go away, man, you're going to be stuck with a bunch of stuff you're never going to be able to play. iTunes, probably never going to go away.
No,
probably not. And the beauty,
and even if it's always going to roll,
you
with
wouldn't
the
be able to
punches.
install it. So there you go.
right. The beauty of the iTunes stuff is that you go back 3-4 years, maybe a little bit more. You were paying the same amount for the digital copy as you were for the physical, but you weren't getting anything. You were getting the movie. And over the past few years, they've started to do so well with the iTunes extras. You're basically getting your Blu-ray DVD. So unless I noticed there was a Facebook thing going around the last couple of days, I'm sure you probably saw it as well. And it's like, these are the exclusive things that you can get from these different stores. And I'm like, okay, we already have this with video games. We're doing it with movies now too. It's like, I have to buy 8 copies of the movie to get all the little collector things.
That's why I say, let's tie this back into Lego. The new DC animated Lego movie, Cosmic Clash, is out.
Right.
And if you get that in the Blu-ray enhanced edition, it also comes with a Cosmic Boy minifigure.
Right.
So yes, I'm definitely going to go get that version because I want that Cosmic Boy minifigure, and I don't want to pay $50 for it online.
That's
but it's
like
the same way if you look at this announcement about Star Wars Force Awakens coming out. If you look at the fine print of what Disney and Lucasfilm sent out, they run down all of the bonus behind the scenes stuff that they're including, and then it says not all digital copies will have these bonus features.
Right.
So yeah, they've come a long way, but when you're looking at probably another 3.5 gigs worth of bonus content, that's something that many people may not want to deliver across their network.
Right. Yeah. Or it could be something to where we start to see the special edition digital version, like, buy the digital copy for $19.99 or buy the copy with all the iTunes extras for $39.99.
Yeah.
I mean, I do notice, and it's probably because of how fast the medium died out, you can't get a 3D movie on iTunes. And I doubt they're going to have 4K movies anytime soon.
Don't bet against that, because with YouTube now able to do the 4K stuff,
Yep.
iTunes very quickly, when you're going to get to the tipping point, probably in about 2-3 years from now, when more 4K TVs are being sold than anything else, especially around Super Bowl time, you will
Right.
see iTunes make an announcement that they've created a new compression algorithm that they can deliver 4K video to the home. And I think isn't YouTube, isn't one of the
Hulu?
Amazons or Hulu's or something?
think it's
Are they
Hulu.
doing? Yeah.
I think some of
4K?
it streams in 4K.
Do they?
Yeah,
So you're
so-
telling me that Apple is going to buy Pied Piper?
No, probably not. But yeah, we will get to see 4K on Apple probably within 4 years. I'm going to bet.
You think?
Or
So?
less.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I just see. I don't. I guess I have a skewed perspective because, I mean, we have a couple. Well, I guess a few TVs in the house, and it's the ones in the bedrooms, and
Right.
and I guess there's the living room one too, but nobody watches that. Like when I do my viewing, I'm on a monitor, and they're primarily for gaming. So. I mean, I have a decent rig, but not enough to game in 4K and 144 frames per second. And to
Right.
me, I'll take 1080 and 144 over 4K and like mid 40s.
Right.
So for me, that 4K jump hasn't been something that's appealed to me yet. And for the looks of a television, I'm like, I ain't spending that much on a TV.
Well,
I mean, they're
but here's the
they're
thing,
going
and
down.
this is
but-
where it comes into this. What is the must-have app that people need? And
Right.
for jumping into HD, and whenever we get up to 4K, it isn't the home movie market. It isn't Blu-ray or HD DVD. It's what can we do with broadcast? And you can look and see when the big jump occurred where people were buying more HD TVs than anything else was from Super Bowl, because if the Super Bowl is going to be broadcast in HD and you want to see everything that the refs are seeing and when they're doing the instant replay stuff, you're going to want to get HD TV. And we're seeing that same push with 4K television, where
Right.
they're not pushing the movies, they're not pushing the CSIs, they're not pushing, the Lego movies. What they're pushing is sports. You want 4K for sports.
Right.
We've consumer cameras already are shooting 4K. I mean, I picked up a camera a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
For less than $2,000 that'll shoot 4K, and it looks great.
Well, there's a GoPro that does 4K, right?
Yeah, GoPros that do
Yeah.
4K. And so they're really priming the audience to say, you guys are shooting this in 4K. Don't you want to see what it looks like in
Right.
4K?
Well, then maybe
And
I
wouldn't sports
misspoke.
look great in 4K. So yeah, maybe for gaming, they haven't come out with 4K, something yet that must-have app. I don't know how Rocket League would look in 4K. I'd probably throw up because of all the detail and the moving around in it.
Yeah.
But, Microsoft could easily push for an upcoming Halo version that could be 4K optimized.
Right.
And it would blow your mind, because the Apple monitor at its highest resolution can only do 5K right now.
Right.
So you would have something from the gaming market that would cause many fans to want to jump to that. But the problem is the size of the screen.
Right.
And for that, you're going to want to get a 42-inch or larger screen
Yeah.
for
Right.
4K to really be shown off.
Yeah, and I have a 55-inch 4K in my home theater Geek library, so
Yeah, and
when he
you're
talks
loving it
about
right now,
monitors, yeah, when he talks about monitors, like I don't know, Star Wars, I need to see that big.
It needs to be big and in
Yeah.
4K.
So
yes.
big his hand comes over to my camera.
Yeah, that big.
Yeah, and maybe again, I mean, I might have misspoke a little bit. Maybe, especially when it comes to the gaming end of it, when we get the announcement of NVIDIA's 10 series or whatever they decide to
Yes.
call it, this fall or summer fall area, maybe they'll have a highlight on 4K, and we'll go from there. Because right now, I mean, I only have a 980, and I've seen people who do benchmarks with like either dual 980 Ti's or even a Titan X or two, and most modern games, you look at Witcher 3, Fallout 4, pushing over 60 frames per second in 4K is a struggle. And
It will be.
yeah, so maybe the modern cards will change up some of that.
I think so. And the reason why I get kind of geek out on some of this tech stuff is before I started Major Spoilers, I was working in the tech side. I was working on the reporting and covering the professional video and animation and audio industry. And then we were also getting into the consumer side of stuff. And so one of the very first podcasts I did back in the day was a show called Coolness Roundup, where we explained technology to the average person so they can understand, why do you want a 4K or why do you want to avoid these kinds of things. So
Right.
yeah, I still there's part of me in there that could be unlocked and talk about
Well, if
giant
you,
4K
Yeah,
monitors and
awesome.
projectors.
I mean, I don't have a set length for the show. We're at about the hour that I mentioned to you, so I don't
Yeah, we
know
can go
if you're
about
pressed
another
for
10 minutes or so if you want.
Cool. Well, speaking tech, where do you stand on VR?
It's fascinating, but until those things get smaller, I don't see a lot of people jumping into it. The new set came out. What is it? The $3,000 for that VR developer set.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of developers are going to buy that, but until again you have that killer app that's going to get people to do it, then I don't think you're going to see people jump on it in droves. Now there are some people experimenting with VR stuff on YouTube.
Right.
The Sam and Nico guys are doing some cool stuff with 360. They just came out with a video I think it was this week. It's like Where's Waldo, and it's a 360 YouTube experience, but you can use it on your phone and move around and those kinds of things.
It's funny you bring that up. I saw that for the first time last night. Do you know what ASMR is?
What is that?
It's basically when you speak in a soft voice and it makes your brain go kind of fuzzy.
Yeah.
So there's people online that put up all these ASMR white noise kind of videos to help people go to sleep.
Oh yeah,
And this one woman just started doing it in that format. So for the first time ever, I'm like, oh my God, what is this? The camera's moving as I move my phone? So filmed in 360 like that with that augmented reality, it's so cool.
Yeah. And the weird thing is, and I haven't seen any of these because, I would never, but, they're shooting adult movies in VR to where you put on those goggles and you're looking around and you can see all the action that's happening.
Well, that's the wave of the future right there. If you really want to sell that product, that's the way to do it.
For the longest time, in the tech side, it's whatever way the adult industry goes, that's the way that technology will go. So
that's what decided the Blu-ray HD DVD war, wasn't it? Like all Vivid and all the big ones went Blu-ray.
Yep.
Yeah. And so when you look and see what some of these companies are doing with some of their VR stuff, it's interesting. But again, I just cannot see. I don't know what the weight of those new VR goggles that just came out this week, but I just can't imagine something of even up to 1.5 pounds resting on the front half of my face,
right,
for an extended period of time. I cannot. I don't think I could experience gaming that way.
No,
I don't think I could watch a movie that way. And right now, if the only way that people are enjoying it is holding up their iPhone to their face without wearing the gear, that's also a disservice too. So I think we're still a ways away. I'm really glad that there are people out there experimenting with it. I've got a 360 rig myself that I haven't really done everything that I want to do with it, but we're not quite there yet. But the good thing is they're developing it and pushing hard on that so that we can be there in 3 more years where it will be a viable consumer product.
Right. How do you feel? I mean, obviously with the Oculus Rift, I mean that has started shipping, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, it's $5.99, and then everyone was like, okay, well, what's the Vive going to be? What's the Vive going to be? And I assume you heard that the Vive pre-orders got announced and it's $7.99.
Right. Yeah, $7.99 for that. But what's the app? What are they doing with it? Is it going to be Duck Hunt?
Well, I think they're just pushing. They're obviously pushing the gaming end because it's Steam. It's Valve.
That's what I'm saying. But what are the 360 games that are out there? Is it a racing game that people are going to be interested in?
Yeah,
because that might be really cool. Is it a first-person shooter? Because that could really benefit from VR. But we haven't really seen a lot of game developers announcing, yes, this is going to be ready on launch day, or this is going to be ready for this, or this is what we're developing it for, or this is what it's going to be used for. Right. I'm not seeing a lot of that.
Give me a legitimate Star Wars dueling game. Or even a dogfight in space. How cool would that be?
Oh, yeah. I mean, really, the first-person shooters, I mean, Halo would be a great one because you can look around, even Star Wars Battlefront, where you can just look around all over the place and not have to worry about turning a joystick one way or another, would be fantastic. And if you've got a dogfight game, then you could do some really great things with that. Like I said, Duck Hunt VR might be the best one because you're walking around, turning your head, and shooting a duck. So there you go. It's got everything you want in a VR game.
Right. Yeah. It's right now. For a literal answer to your question, if you pre-order the Vive, you get like Tilt Brush, Fantastic Contraption, and Job Simulator 2050.
Great.
Those are the games. Those are really the games.
Those are the games that you get if it comes with it. Yeah. So you get a VR job simulator. I bet everyone that gets to work from home is looking.
Everybody stands in line for 12 hours
because they really need to deliver overqualified.
What I'm waiting for is some of the things that have been talked about or theorized is like, where you aren't watching a movie in VR, but you go into VR, you are network connected to friends across the web in VR, and you go into a movie theater and you're in there with, whatever avatar your friends pick, and you're virtually watching a movie together.
I don't know if I like to go to a movie to watch a movie, not to have my friends chitter chat away. That'd be what I'm afraid of. But there was, I don't know if Tested did this a while ago, but they went and they showed a VR thing that with Star Wars, where you're actually walking around in this little set with the VR goggles and everything on, and it's got the stereo stuff. And what it's doing is it's tracking your movements
Right.
in this little space, and then it's reacting to video that they've actually shot.
Oh, that's cool.
That's going on at the same time. So it's like if you start to turn away, C-3PO is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, come back here real quick," and then you come back, and then it's got another sequence that you watch and those kinds of things. So
It'd be kind of cool if you could ghost your way through a movie like that and have the actual movie happen around you.
yeah,
That would be cool.
it would
Yeah.
also be very freaky. I mean,
Yeah.
especially if you're watching Independence Day
Yeah.
Or a horror movie.
or a horror movie.
I would love a
it
VR
really
horror.
would be that scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
You get
Well,
the real.
yeah. Well, on that note, Stephen, it's been a blast, man. Thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thank you guys. This was fun.
Yeah,
Great
nice to meet you, man.
conversation. And where can our listeners find you?
You can find me at majorspoilers.com. That's where we've got all of our cool stuff going on. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/majorspoilersvideo. And then you can find me on Twitter at majorspoilers.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And again, everybody check that out. As if you've been listening to this episode, you obviously have discovered that Stephen is very knowledgeable and passionate about what he talks about. So head on over to the website and check out the YouTube channel. And and our chat room says that they like you as a guest.
Hey, thank you, everybody.
Yeah. By the way, Josh.
I like you as listeners.
Josh Mowat, thanks for joining us. Nice to see you in the chat room, man.
Very
Thanks.
cool. Very cool. Yeah, we had some extra people come in, so that retweet really helped you. So I appreciate that. But anyway, as for the show, you can follow us on Twitter at IG_MindOfAGeek. And you can find the schedule of upcoming guests as well as the show notes for all of our past episodes at inkedgeekstudios.com/mindofageek. If you have a question or comment for an upcoming guest, there is a submit form on that site, or you can just email us at mindofageekpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, if you enjoy the content that we provide for you here on Mind of a Geek and all the rest of the shows at Inked Geek Studios, please consider heading on over to patreon.com/IG Studios and giving a little bit of the value that we give you back to us to help us keep doing what we do. Be sure to follow Brandon on Twitter at Crimson Flag with a K and 2 G's. Follow myself on Twitter at XCynicX and catch Mind of a Geek typically live every Monday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time at youtube.com/inkedgeekstudios/live. And you can also catch all of our past videos there since we've started streaming to YouTube. So once again, a big thank you to Stephen for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Look forward to chatting with you again sometime in the future. Thank you to Brandon for joining me.
Oh, I'm so happy to be
Thank you
here.
to our live chat room. And obviously, thank you to everyone that listens to this in recorded podcast or video form. So for Brandon, for myself, and for the rest of us at IG Studios, thank you guys very much for listening, and we will talk to you next week. And now my soundboard's not... This has kind of become
Always
a running
the way.
joke. It's
Yeah,
the
it happens
soundboard
every time.
delays every time, and then soundbite says not responding, and then it will randomly start playing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Just when we
See?
start to...
There we go.
Exactly. Good times.
It was fun.